Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business and share them with us so that we can all learn together. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, endless social media, posting, or any of the old, ineffective traditional marketing methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. The link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, our special guest is Emma Hossack. She's the owner of Glow at Work, where she provides training and coaching services. So Emma, welcome to the show. And I want to start off by asking you a question that I always start with, which is this. If you were somehow able to go back in time when you started your first business, but knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the first 12 months?
I think for me, I would trust my instincts a lot more and really stay true to my values. It's really tempting to take on work with people that perhaps on paper look like they could be great, but actually in reality, you're not aligned. And I think that causes probably an unnecessary amount of stress. And I think when you start a business, the nerves are there, you're desperate to get it working, and you might say yes to things that actually you really should say no to. And whilst that might hold you back and slow you down a bit, I think it does pay off in the long run.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because sometimes you don't know exactly what you are or aren't aligned with until you get some of those people, and then you
Yeah.
recognize it much faster as you move forward. But are there certain things that you've realized that are, um, I guess, red flags, you could call them that, of things that you're just not aligned with, or if anyone's saying, "Gosh, Emma, how do I even recognize that stuff?" What are some things that you learned to be able to recognize that sooner?
I mean, look, part of what I train most weeks with leaders is values, is knowing your core values. So really knowing what are the things that are really important for you, what energizes you, what are the bits when they're being compromised, does it feel in your gut it's the wrong thing, it feels bad for your well-being, you feel that horrible feeling both mentally and physically. And I think before anyone should start a business, they should really explore with themselves or a coach what their core values are. And so for me, it's about starting with that as your compass. And once you know that, then you can align to it. I think it's when you try to pretend that it doesn't matter or something's going to work out anyway, that you can come unstuck. And so for me, what I trained, I didn't necessarily live, and I was just jumping, around into trying to make money quickly or trying to win clients quickly or work with people quickly. And I think that doesn't pay off. For me, a massive thing is integrity. I don't say yes to things that I know I can't deliver and do really well for you if you're a client.
Mm.
And so there were potentially things that I was being persuaded to do that really didn't align. And so I think that can cause real stress, actually, whether it's people or projects.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, along that alignment, what have you been able to do or change what you've done in the way that you have looked at generating business and approaching prospects and more relationship-led ways that do align better with you?
Yeah, I mean, look, interesting. I've never been quiet. I've been working as a coach for 10 years, certainly running my business for more than five. And actually, I haven't ever had a period of time where I haven't always been busy. The most of the work I have had in the past is through recommendation. So, also what I've done really well is whenever I've been invited to be a keynote speaker, deliver something for a client, it's always led on to more work. So I think the more that people can see of who you really are. And I think that comes from either doing a great job for someone, seeing you stand on stage and talk about things you're passionate about and the work and the content that we do. But interestingly, lately, I've been getting real headway on LinkedIn videos. People want to see who you are, so sending a video to a prospective client of who you are, what you do, why you want to work with them has been really successful. I think so much with AI is people don't know what's real or not anymore. So when you can actually use your face, your voice, and deliver something that's really you, I think that really does pay off.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely one of the big things around the personal touch, particularly with AI now. I mean, it's always been that relationship-led personal touch,
Yeah.
but as you totally agree with you, people just don't know what's real or not anymore.
Mm.
And so being able to have that, oh, this is an actual person. They've taken the time to
Yeah.
reach out to me. It does make a massive impact for sure. Yeah, very, very
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I think the more that you get out speaking to people, that's why events are so important to go to, from a learner perspective, but also from a business perspective where you can network in real life, you can perhaps share your knowledge on stage or to people to help progress them. People want to see you. And it's a bit like I always say, whatever client you work with, whoever you choose, you've got to have a connection there. And you can only really find that if you actually speak to the person or see them doing what they do.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely agree with you. Well, one of the things I love to talk about, Emma, are the challenges that we have in business because it can be challenging being a business owner. And oftentimes we can feel like we're alone in that process. And so as we just talk more about it and realize, oh, I'm not alone in this, it can feel more normal. So what's the number one business challenge that you've faced so far? And it can be in any area of the business, but what's the number one challenge you faced so far? And what's the lessons that you learned from that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've had a very successful number of years, and I think the challenge is always I'm so passionate about working with my clients that you can take your eye off the ball when it comes to new business,
Mhm.
and actually there's so much what I do. I deliver training content. No client ever has the same program. Everything I do is bespoke, so that takes time. I probably spend more time than most on content writing so that when I get to deliver to my clients, it's really specialist for them around their values. But that means that you're not always business developing. And so, where there's a point where your clients are making redundancies or their budgets are cut back, you can come to that point where the nerves start to kick in. You think, I haven't got anything new coming in. So, I think it's always that challenge of serving your clients and not taking your eye off the ball with winning new work or having those networking meetings, getting out and meeting new clients.
Yeah, yeah, it's that balance for sure that's so important. Yeah. Well, is there anything that you've seen over the last, let's say, year to year and a half that's really significantly changed in your industry? And what's ways for people to be able to work around that?
I mean, look, everyone's talking about it. Okay, so and you can't go out for dinner without speaking about AI. I think you could, we're talking about it all the time, and I think AI is something that is shifting. Certainly the training industry because you can use AI to develop content. You can, it's used for everything. So I think we've got to make sure that we are ahead of the game, that we aren't losing our personal touch. And so I've seen it shift where certainly in the training industry and certainly the clients I work with, they are cutting back in learning and development teams. They're cutting back in many where AI can be maybe used to replace or work alongside. So that's been something that we have done. But however, I've embraced AI. What I've made sure I've done is don't make it your slave, make it an addition that refines the work you do. Use it as your best friend to check, but making sure that you don't use it as your go-to. And I think we have to be really face into it. AI is here to stay. And actually, what is it that's going to make you special and stand out? And I'll keep coming back to it that it's about being authentic, being a subject matter expert, delivering something that's really personal, and making sure that you don't rely on it, but use it as your partner.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the key thing is using it as a tool and a resource as
Mm,
opposed to just letting it do everything for you.
yeah.
One day it might be, well, probably will be at that point at some point in time. But yeah, I think, yeah, using it as a tool and a resource is the best place to put that. Well, when you look at some of the common threads, this is one of the other questions I like to ask when people have been doing this for so long, is there a common thread that you see with clients that if they were to just work with this one thing, that their everything that they're working on would improve.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was out in the States last week talking about just this. What is it that we need to get right in teams to help them perform or organizations? And for me, it comes back to, I'm going to say it again, it's going to come back to values, it's going to come back to foundation. So if you are a leader, your role as a leader is to role model the right behavior and values of your organization. Leadership where listening doesn't happen, we have words on a wall that are values, we're not aligning those behaviors to it. I see that's where business perhaps doesn't get to where it needs to get to. I see that's where attrition increases, but also clarity around the values, what they mean, but also clarity in everything we do, being very intentional. The best businesses that I work with have great leadership where there is emotional intelligence, that they are really bought into the values of the business and they live and breathe and talk about those all the time. And they embed that in their training. They have training partners like me that are passionate about making sure we live those. And the other side is making sure that processes are in place. Again, organizations can get all the values right, but where are the processes? Are we sure that the people that work for our organization know what their targets are, what they mean, and how to get there? Are we having great conversations? If I'm a manager, do I know what the why is of my individual team members? So I'd say it always comes back to core values, not words on a wall, that we live and breathe them, and that we invest into learning development of our people around those values. And it has to start with great leadership, not operational stuff. I mean, leadership that is really passionate about people and puts people first, is for me.
Yeah. One of the things I find really interesting around the emotional intelligence piece is that those that have it get it and understand it, but then those that don't, they probably don't even realize they don't have it.
Yeah.
So for people that are out there and maybe they realize they do or they don't, but they just go, do you know what? I feel like there's something in the business, which oftentimes might be the leader, but they just might not realize it there at the moment. What are some key things, just one or two, that you think, okay, here's the first thing to start doing, particularly towards people, leaders that may not have as much emotional intelligence as
Yeah.
others?
And look, everyone's got emotional intelligence. I test psychometric test it. So, I'm going to say it's great to have the data. We test it. And so we test leadership and teams and organizations. I think if you can, and it's funny, I was with a client last week and there was someone that said, I feel as though I don't have as much emotional intelligence. And the one thing that we work on is coming to work intentional. How can I seek to understand, and taking a pause and listening without responding? So if you can go into the mindset of what I'm going to do today, seek to understand before I judge. I'm going to say less and listen more, listen to hear, not respond. And I'm going to I'm going to really work hard to look through the lens of the people that I work with, not through mine. And that still comes back to that seeking to understand. So much about emotional intelligence is just listening, taking a step back and being curious to understand why people might behave like they do. And so
Mm.
I think those things are really key. But I'm massive into psychometric testing because I think it gives you the data and it helps you then retest again so that when we start working through the tools and delivering great training, we can retest and see the progress. But anyone can improve their emotional intelligence if you want to.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, over the next, say, 2 to 3 years of your business, what are your goals? What would you like to achieve?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to keep coming back to keeping it really human centered. So I love to work with fewer organizations, but really working to grow the human sustainability of the workforce. And what I mean by that is, how do we stay resilient in times of change? How do we keep improving emotional intelligence when robots are taking over and we're not sure what else is really real? And how do we keep improving leadership, first line managers, because there's no better time to improve human connection. So for us, it's doing more of that within organizations, ensuring that we're creating experiential training when everything feels so disconnected. So for us, it's about growing, growing more turnover, but improving more lives at work. And that's the goal for the next 3 years. Still leaning on AI, creating content that can be scaled is something I'm looking to do over the next couple of years where we can't get in front of people. But for us, it's about never losing touch with actually what we're really needing more and more over the next few years is that human connection, authentic training, bespoke work where people feel invested in. If you look at any data now, Gen Z, our Gen Z community, their number one priority in the workplace is personal development. And so companies mustn't cut those budgets. We mustn't put that on the back burner in times of change or hardship. It's really important that we keep people front and center.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Well, for people that are looking to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can do that through LinkedIn. So you can search my name, Emma Hossack, or get in touch with me by emailing me very easily, emma@glow@work.co.uk.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Emma, thank you so much for being on the show. And I definitely recommend people that are listening, if you feel that Emma can help you out, definitely reach out to her as well. And again, Emma, thank you so much for taking the time out and just sharing your wisdom and experience. I really do appreciate you being on the podcast today. So, and as a reminder, everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects that doesn't rely on any of the old, ineffective traditional marketing methods that everybody hates. And to find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn. The link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.